this video, our topic is going to be BOQ. BOQ, the full form is bills of quantity. In simple words, it's a cost or an estimate that a designer, an interior designer, provides to a client when they're designing their house. This basically is a breakdown of everything that is going to incur in terms of the payments when they're designing their space. This usually includes a couple of items. So, this is a quick example of how a BOQ looks. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how to make a BOQ because I'm going to give you an exact understanding of how to make a breakdown of each of these rooms in terms of the description, the costing, and how to make it on your own. And by the end of it, after giving the individual breakdown, at the end, you're going to have the total cost of everything as you can see over here. So now that you know what a BOQ is, let me explain to you how exactly one should make it. So first, let's understand how to make the breakdown of a BOQ. I usually prefer to use an Excel software like this to make it. It's really simple to use. So first thing is you start with right on top, you insert your logo, your brand, your company logo so that it looks a bit more professional and personal. The next step is to write the title of this document, which is a BOQ estimate. Below that, it's important to write your client's name because you're going to be having so many clients and so many BOQs to make. So let's say if you write whatever the client's name is XYZ. Then you should mention the date on when you have made the first estimate because as the project goes on, you're going to be having couple of revisions of these. So let's say you write the date, the month, and even the year. You mentioned the date. Now let's understand the different components below that. First sequence which you understand is the serial number in which you're going to be numbering 1, 2, 3, 4 so that there is no confusion. The next column is all about the particulars. Particulars is basically the detailed description of each item so that there is full clarity on what you're referring to. The next is the quantity column. If you see in the quantity column, you're going to be mentioning how many measure how you measure each item. So for example, if you are making a wall, breaking a wall, the quantity will be mentioned over here. And last but not the least, you have the unit in which you're going to be measuring that quantity. So for example, if you have an area of a 10 by 10, it will be 100 square feet. There are two units which you measure in. One is a square feet and one is a running feet, which is known as an RFT. A square feet in simple words is anything which has a length and a width, basically any two dimensions. And an RFT running feet is basically when you have only one dimension. So for example, if you're measuring a wall, you're going to have the length and the width. Whereas if you're just measuring maybe like a small false ceiling edge, then that's only going to have one. So that's known as an RFT. The next is the rate. The rate is basically anything that is per unit of that cost. So, for example, if you have a laborer, right? Let's say you have a carpenter who's doing the work. You have to give the rate of that carpenter into this amount. And the last is your amount. The amount is basically a multiplication of the quantity multiplied by the rate. So, let's say if you have 100 square feet and the rate is 100, you are going to have an amount of 10,000. Now, how you can do this is a very simple calculation. You can literally just create this equation as you can see in this, which is simply you do equal to, select the column, and for multiplication, you can do an asterisk like this, select the next column, and click an enter. So, for example, in this one, again, if I put, let's say, 50, and I put another 50, it will automatically calculate it for you. So you don't have to do much of the maths. But don't worry, I'm going to explain to you exactly how this is done with a perfect example of 1 BHK that we have designed. The entire project is a 4 BHK, but I'm going to give you an example with the 1 BHK. A 1 BHK is basically a 1 bedroom hall kitchen. You can do this for as big or small your project is, from 1 BHK to a 4 BHK to any size. So now that you have a basic understanding of how a BOQ format looks, let me explain to you the details of what all comes under this. So BOQ is basically divided into three parts. One is your contractor work. Your contractor work is basically all the contractor laborers that actually execute the project. This includes something like your civil, carpenter, plumber, electrician, painter, POP, all these people, contractors who actually work on their project, they usually have a rate in which you actually do the work. So I'll give you an example of a contractor rate list after this, but first let's just understand the framework. So one is the contractor rate list. The next thing which is included in the BOQ are your materials. Now, what happens is when a client is designing a house, they use different types of materials, right? So it's very important to include that as well. So the second section is materials. The materials usually include a base material and a final exposed material. The base material is something that is going to be used, which is quite standard. For example, if you're going to be using your plywood, you're going to be using the internal POP material, all of that is your base material. Usually, the base material is included in the contractor rate list itself. Don't worry, I'll give you an example of that. And the second form of material is your exposed final finish material. A quick example of this is, let's say if you have your marble, quartz, tiles, granite, anything that you can physically see from outside, these are your finished materials. So then after you've put in all the contractor rates, the next thing is to put in all your materials of the finished items. And last but not the least, being a designer is a lot of work. So you have to actually showcase all of those costs, all your extra services. For example, if you are making 3D views, if you have a site supervisor, minor small items, and of course your design fees right at the end. Because whether you do it on a percentage, a lump sum amount, or a square feet rate, it's very important to include your fees here. And last, you have your grand total, which is a total of the contractor rate, the material, and of course, all your services, which includes your design fees. So, a total of all of these items gives you the total of your BOQ. Now, remember, I mentioned to you about the contractor rates. The first one is, let's say, your civil. So, for example, when you have to divide the BOQ, you're going to first section has is civil. Now, in the civil, you're going to further divide it into different rooms. So, let's say the first one is civil. Under the civil, you have first is your kitchen. Under the kitchen, let's say for a 1 BHK, your next is your bedroom, your master bedroom. Then it's going to be your master bathroom. And post this, let's say you're going to have your living or your dining room, which usually includes a passage as well. So if you see in the civil area, we divided it room wise. One kitchen, one bedroom, one bathroom, and one living dining. Similarly, you do this for the next section. So after you have done A, civil work, next one which you're going to be doing is B, plumbing. Now, usually the civil, just to give you clarity, for the civil worker, he usually does all your civil related masonry work. So, for example, making the walls, breaking the walls, putting in the tiles, etc. I'll give you a little more detail exactly what all comes under that after this. Then the second contractor that we have is a plumber. A plumber is basically anyone who does all the water lines for you. So again, you're going to divide this per room wise. Now, of course, for a bedroom, you do not need a plumber. So the only items that you need to put room wise in this is one, your kitchen, and two is your master bathroom. Of course, if you have any additional room which requires a bit more plumbing work or something, you can always add this. So you had your civil, which included your kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, living passage, and then you had your plumbing, which included your kitchen and your master bathroom. The next contractor we have is a carpenter. Your carpenter is basically someone who does all the carpentry work, which includes, let's say, making the furniture, putting up any ply panels, etc. So now again, for the carpentry work, we further divided into multiple rooms. So let's say in this case, you have the kitchen, you have the utility room, you have the master bedroom, you have the master bathroom, and you have the living dining passage. So if you can see individually, I have this I have put in what all items come into each, which we will get into. Till now we have covered is one, your civil, two, your plumbing, and three, your carpentry. After you have these, The next set of contractor, which you will write all of these details for, is your electrical work. Your electrician is someone who basically puts in all the wiring for the lights, for the switchboards, anything for the geyser pump, etc. So for that, again, you divide it further on in the same way, room wise. So you have your kitchen, you have your master bedroom, you have your utility, you have your master bedroom, you have your master bathroom, and of course, your living dining kitchen. If you can, then try to keep the same room names and the same order so that there is some similarity going all throughout your BOQ. So you had the electrician. After the electrician's total work room wise, the next contractor that comes in is your POP contractor. Your POP contractor is basically anyone who does all the wall POPs, the plaster of Paris, onto the walls to make it smooth, as well as onto the ceilings when you're creating fall ceilings. So for a POP contractor, again, you're going to be including room wise. So you'll break it up into your kitchen, your utility, your master bedroom, your master bathroom, and your living dining passage. So I hope you're getting a bit of a flow of how this entire BOQ works. And then, of course, last but not the least, the next contractor is your painter and your polishing. So basically, the painter and polish does exactly what the name sounds. All the painting of your walls, of your ceilings, any polishing of, let's say, any woodwork that needs to be done, that's included in this. Again, similarly, you put it in the same ways, room wise: kitchen, utility, master bedroom, master bathroom, and of course, your living and dining passage area. And then right at the end of it, you include is your total contractor cost, which will include all your contractors, naming again your civil, your plumber, your electrician, your POP, and your painter. Putting all of these contractor costs total is where you will mention it over here. So I will explain to you how exactly this is done. But this is part one of the BOQ, which is the contractor labor payments. The next set of payments which come into this is your material list. Now, this is the finished material that we spoke about. For the finished material, usually, again, we divide it contractor wise in terms of the material. So, let's say the first contractor we had mentioned in the labor rates was your civil contractor. So, similarly, we will write civil material. Now, usually for the civil material, there are certain finished products which are quite standard and common throughout all projects. So, naming some of them is like, say, marble, your quartz, your tiles, your granite. Feel free to add all the materials that you are using for your project. The next one is your plumbing material. Remember, in the order for the contractor labors, after the civil we had written plumber. So let's keep that order the same. So the next one is your plumbing material. For the plumbing material, you basically have your kitchen sanitary, your bathroom sanitary, anything related to plumbing. Then you have your carpentry material. In the carpentry material, all the materials which you're going to be using is, let's say, your plywood, your wood, your laminates, veneers, glass, mirror, hardware, wardrobe, handles, anything, locks, anything that you can use for the carpentry work is mentioned in this carpentry material. Then you have is the electrical material. In the electrical material, usually we have all the items which are going to be fixed outside. For example, your lights, your switchboards, your drivers, your fans, etc. The internal wiring cost is usually included in the labor rates of the electrician, but don't worry, I'll explain that to you. First, let's just get a quick overview of everything. So if you see for the material list, giving a quick look back at, for the material list, we had one, civil material, two, plumbing material, three, carpentry material, four, electrical material, and right at the end, we have a total material cost. As you must be wondering, there is no painting material cost, but don't worry, I'll explain that to you because that comes in again in your labor costing. There is no additional cost we add into this, and I'll tell you the reason why. So, recapping, one is contractor labor final cost, and two is your material list cost. And then the last section, which we know as your miscellaneous, this usually depends on or couple of items. So, for example, when you don't have a material which you need to buy, but it's a whole product, we put it in the miscellaneous item. For example, your loose furniture, which usually includes your sofas, chairs, tables. Then you have your home decor items. For example, when you're styling up your house, you have your wallpapers, mattresses, curtains, rugs, paintings, and artifacts, planters, etc. And then you actually have your miscellaneous items. This usually comes under the services of what an interior designer provides, which usually includes your 3D visuals where you can actually see how the space is going to look. So sometimes you outsource it to somebody else, or sometimes you do it within your office, but usually there is a cost to this. So the number of views that you have, there will be a cost for each of that. The next is a site supervision. A site supervision is basically if you're hiring a site supervisor to make sure that the work goes quicker, you can put in his cost in this miscellaneous item. There are certain additional services which you can provide, like let's say deep cleaning, steam ironing, adding a nameplate, pest control, any transport additional for any products coming in, going on, any shifting of furniture, mosquito net, and miscellaneous items. The last part, miscellaneous items, is something that we just write as a lump sum amount for anything that we may have not incurred during the project because a lot of things get added on later. And then we do a total of this material item list. So you had the contractor rate list, you had the material list, and you had the miscellaneous items. The last is, of course, a total of all of these. That includes your material and your labor. And the total of whatever this amount is, usually a designer charges a percentage on it. So let's say if the total was X amount, the percent, and let's say you have a 10% design fee which you charge to your clients, you will do 10% of X, and that becomes your design fee. If you don't want to do it percentage wise, you can also do it on a lump sum fixed amount or a square feet. That completely depends on you. I personally prefer percentage, hence I do a percentage of the total. So don't worry, once we put an example of understanding this, you will understand it better. And last but not the least, you should put in a small terms and conditions right below in which you can mention certain items, that what the advance payments will be, what will be the timings of the project and the delivery, just basic terms and conditions. You already have your contract which has the major terms. So this is just a small reminder with certain items so that ensuring that these rates are only valid for 6 months, etc. After the BOQ, we will be talking about the payment schedule, but first let's understand the BOQ. In the first one, when I spoke to you about the contractor labor rate, over here you put in the quantity. The quantity is basically any measurement that you measure from what is being designed. And the rate is what the contractor labor rate gives you. Remember? So, in terms of the contractor labor rates, usually I prefer having this table in which you can see I have already all my contractor rates mentioned over here. For example, if there is a civil plumber, there is a electrician, there is POP, painter, and carpenter. So, in terms of the civil and plumber, usually all your contractors already have this rate list with them. So, you can have, they will give you a rate for doing all their work. So, for example, if they are breaking a wall or breaking the plaster and tiles, they will have a certain rate cost per square feet to it. If not square feet, they will have it RFT, right? So, for example, if this is breaking a brick wall, the cost is 60 rupees per square feet. If this work is to actually do a waterproofing on the wall plaster, the rate is 110 per square feet. Now, this rate differs from city to city and it always gets upgraded every few months. So, please keep this in mind. This rate list is just as an example of the contractor rate list that I use, which is in the city of Mumbai for this year 2026. But please get these updated every few months and make sure that you're using the contract rate list which you're using from your contractor specifically. So let's say the civil contractor will have all of these items in his rate list, starting from the marble fixing to the cleaning and everything. Then you have is your electrician. For the electrician, he's also going to be having all his individual items. So let's say the cost of fixing one light, what is going to be his rate? For fixing two-way light points, what is going to be his rate? For fixing a specific wire, what is going to be his rate? Similarly, for all these items, he will have specific rates. Now, what happens for wires? There is no square feet that you can do. So, usually they give you the measurement in an RFT. Running foot is basically when you don't have a length and width. The wiring is usually from one side to the other side. So, the best way to give the measurement of this is an RFT. So, let's say if your wall 1 to wall 2 distance is 10 feet, there will be a certain length from there will be a certain amount of wire that is used from wall 1 to wall 2. So that will be measured in an RFT running fee. So the electrician rate list will include all of these items. He will also include the cost for fixing one light fixture, for fixing one fan, for fixing an LED strip, and for fixing switchboards, for fixing plug points. All of these details will be there in his rate list. Now, what we will do is once we have all of these rate lists, we actually copy paste them into our main BOQ. The next set of contractors is your POP. Now, POP is usually the materials which they use depends on which brand. Usually, a good brand which we recommend is Saint Gobain, which is a good brand, but be comfortable and use the brand you're comfortable with. But different types of gypsum materials that we use. One is, let's say, a Hilux ceiling. This is usually a waterproof material which is used more in bathrooms. Then you have your regular gypsum ceiling. So each of them will have their individual costs of fixing it. Remember, these are not the material rates, these are the labor rates of the contractor actually fixing these items. In case of a POP, usually these rates include the material as well as the labor because there's not much that you need to choose. Once you've decided you want to use a gypsum ceiling, you're going to be using a gypsum ceiling. The differences could only be the thicknesses. So you have individual rates for that. But in terms of, let's say, the electrician, you will only be paying him for the fixing of the switchboard. The actual switchboard costing is not included. As you can see below here also it's mentioned that the switchboard plate cost, the actual light cost is not included in the above rate because that is very different for every individual. Whereas for the POP, it usually includes the material as well as the labor. Coming to your painter, it's the same case as the POP. In this case also you usually have different kinds of paints and this includes your material as well as your labor. So let's say if you decided to use Asian paints and you want to use a royal paint for the ceiling and the wall, you have the rate for that. Now you must be wondering why there is a square feet and an RFT running feet cost in the painter. So usually what happens is when you're painting a wall or you're painting a ceiling, there are two sections that you paint. One, if let's say you're painting a wall, you have the length and the height and you multiply the two, so you get a square feet cost. Whereas when you're painting a, let's say, just a small line or let's say just an edge of a specific door edge or a wall edge, usually that is taken under RFT. Anything that you cannot measure with the length and width, it taken into RFT because what happens is the thickness of items is usually less than 12 inches. So when it is less than 12 inches, it's usually taken into an RFT cost. So that is why when let's say if you're painting the wall, the cost will be 45 rupees per square feet. Whereas if you're painting the edge of a wall, then the cost will be a 22.5 RFT. And remember, these rates will keep changing depending on the city and depending in which year you're using it based on the contractor you are working with. Last but not the least, we have the carpenter. The carpenter also usually has his rate list in which he's going to be explaining to you how much he's going to charge you to make a wardrobe, to make a side table, to do the headboard, all your loose furniture. If you're not buying it ready made and you're getting it made from a carpenter, then you should definitely keep all of these costs in mind. These are usually lump sum rates or they can be per square feet. So, for example, if your cupboard is 8 feet by 4 feet, that is 8 into 4 is 32 square feet. You multiply 32 into this rate, which is 2950. This is just a quick overview of what a contractor rate list is. So remember when we were doing the BOQ, we divided it into three parts: the contractor labor rate, the materials, and the miscellaneous materials with your design fee. So all of these items that you can see in the contractor rate list comes in the first part of the BOQ. Let me quickly show you that again. So in this contractor rate list, what you're going to do is, let's say in the kitchen, you have put in all of these items that you have got from your civil contractor. So just as an example, what I have done is I have already put in certain quantities and the square feet and the rates based on my project and my contractor. So let's say if you were breaking a wall. Now, how do you get to this number 50? It's really simple. So let's say if you have your drawing file, which you have already made. Let's take an example of the kitchen here. So for example, if you are going to be making a wall over here and you are going to be breaking this wall. So the length of this wall, as you can see, is a 1 feet 4, and the length of this wall is, let's say, a 3 feet, right? So you take the measurements from here to get the square feet area. So for example, you know that this wall is 1 feet 4, and you know the height of this wall is 10. So now when you do 1 feet 4, usually you multiply it. So for example, if you have a 2 feet, which is a complete round figure, you will, and the height of your room is, let's say, 10 feet. So you will 2 feet into 10 feet gives you 20 square feet. But this is if you have a round figure. Now, what if you have a number like a 1 feet 4 inches? So usually we round it off. So anything which is within the range of 1 to 3 gets converted into a point 0.3. Anything in the range of 3 to 6 gets converted into a point 0.6. So for example, if this is 1.1 feet 4, it comes in the category of between 3 to 6. So when we're doing the calculation, this 1 feet 4 inches in numerical sense will be 1.6. So you will do 1.6, which is the length, into the height of the wall. The height of the wall, let's say in this example, is a 10 feet. So you will do 1.6 into 10, which is basically 16 square feet. So in case of this over here, when you are doing the calculation of, you will write 16 square feet. And let's say you already have the rate of 30 put in over here. So a quick way to do this is to already have all your rates mentioned over here. So it's a lot easier. You don't have to keep looking back at your contractor rate list and doing it. You should keep this template ready in which you have mentioned all your descriptives and all the rates from your contractor rate list. The only thing you need to keep adding is your quantity, right? So I already gave you an example of how I got this 16. Now let's understand how to get these items first. So for example, if let's say you go into the contractor rate list. Your contractor rate list in the civil has all of these items. If you see, these items include from item number 1 going all the way to item number 54. Now, obviously, you're not going to need all these 54 items, right? Because every project is a bit different. But a quick hack that I found is to basically just copy all of these items. Make sure that you don't copy the square feet rate. Just copy all the items in the description here. You copy this. You go into your BOQ. I'm going to take a fresh new BOQ so that it's a little easy for understanding. And let's say I copy the entire civil in the kitchen section here. And I paste it here. Want to replace it? Yes. So now if you see all the items which were there in my civil rate list, which I'll just show it to you again. So all these items which were there over here, I have simply copy pasted that BOQ here, right? So this comes into the description section. Now matching to this, I need to put in the rates over here. So what I will do is in the same order that I have into my rate list here, now I'm going to copy the rate section. I'm going to copy all of these. Since I'm only doing the kitchen, I'm going to first copy all of these. I'm going to copy this, go back to my BOQ section. Now make sure that you're starting from the same line here. So let's say I'm going to take this and paste it here. So now if you see, I have all of these put over here where I have my rate and I have my unit. The only thing left for me is to calculate the quantity. So remember that example which I gave you when we were calculating the wall, where I said that we had a 1 feet for wall. So I rounded it off into 1.6, which was the length. Then I multiplied the length into the height of the wall, which was basically a 10 feet. So I did 1.6 into 10, which gave me a 16 square feet. So then what I do is I come into the BOQ section here, and let's say for breaking the brick wall here, I write 16. Let's say I had to break that wall. Now what, can you see how I got this 960 on its own? It's a very simple thing. So basically Excel has a lot of formulas. So what I do is after I have put in the square feet, the rate, the description of all of the details, what I do is I do a simple calculation in the amount column. So what I do is, for example, I write an equals to, I select the first column over here. I put an asterisk. Asterisk is basically a symbol for multiplication. For division, you can do a slash, but I do multiplication, so I put an asterisk, and then I select the second column over here. So if you see, the first column is a C15, which is basically in this if you see C, and in this if you see 15. So C15 is what comes in here. C15 is what comes in here. Then I do the asterisk and then I click on this. Now, if you see, this is E15. So that is why E15 automatically comes, and I just click enter. So now this enter basically means any amount that I put, let's say I put a 10 here, it will automatically calculate 10 into 45. Let's say if I put a 40 here, it will calculate it. If I put a random number like 35 here, it will calculate it. So this will automatically calculate it for you. Then what you do is you literally select this one column, press control, and while pressing control, drag it all the way down here. So what happens is that this formula which you had put over here, which was basically equal to this column into this, will now be applied to the rest of this entire section. So since I already have my rates, the only thing I have to put in is the quantity. So let's say if I put 30 here, it will automatically calculate it. If I put 50 here, it will automatically calculate it. If I put 80 here, any number that I put, if I put a random 22 here, if I put a 10 here, basically any number that I put in here will automatically multiply into the rate and give me the amount. But of course, I'm just randomly putting numbers. This is just as an example for you to get an idea. So similarly, you do this for all your civil items. Now, how you can calculate each of these items? So let's say if you are going to be making a wall. So remember when we were doing the drawing file example, one wall I told you was a 1 feet for, another wall which I told you was, let's say, 3 feet. So let's say this is a wall we have to make. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to do a 3 feet length. Again, let's take the height is 10 feet. So you do 3 into 10, which is 30. Then you basically go back into the AutoCAD section. And let's say the wall which we are making is 30. So I do 30, enter. And can you see I already got my calculation. If I look at it from here, 30 is the quantity. The rate I have already put in from my contractor rate list, and the amount is auto calculated because I have put in the equals to formula from the quantity into rate. Similarly, you make sure that you fill this in for all your items, whether it is a C/X brick wall. Now you have different costs for building a 3-inch wall or a 9-inch wall, for putting the plaster, for putting any loft if you're making. Put in all your square feet rates. So an example that I have already done over here is for this one project where I had put in all the quantities here for the civil items, all the units, which is square feet or RFT. I have put in all the rates of my contractors and the amount which automatically comes when you multiply equal to quantity into rate. So if you see, when I put in all of these items in this, I get a total kitchen cost. Now let's understand how I got this total kitchen cost. Once I have put in all of this information over here, a quick hack so that you don't have to sit and add all of these items, there's another formula in this. Let me show it to you in the first open BOQ that I had. So let me just put random numbers for you: 10, 20, 50, 22, 44, 40, 58, 70, 48. I'm just randomly putting numbers for the quantity, right? So now that once you have put in all of these amounts, can you see how magically I already got this amount here? Want to know how I did it? It's really simple. Now again, Excel is all about formulas. So what I did is I did equals to sum, S-U-M, equals to sum. You type that. Then you do shift and open a bracket. Select the first amount that you want to total it from. So let's say in this, I want to total from this amount because this is the first section in my civil kitchen, which is, if you see over here, it comes as F15 because F is the column, 15 is the row. Then I do a colon like this and I select the last number, let's say in this case here. So if you see, this is F37, F37, and I close the bracket and I do enter. So now what it does is it basically totals up all of these amounts over here. So better than calculating one each item, this will give you the total here. So for the example that I have already done, when I did this, if I click into this, you can actually see the formula equals to sum, open bracket, select the first item, which is in this case, let's say your F15, colon, select the last column in this section, which is, let's say, your F37, and close the bracket. And then that's the total you get. Now you similarly do this for the rest of it, rest of all the rooms in the civil. So let's say you did that for the kitchen. The next section was your utility room. For the utility room, again, you take in all the walls which you are breaking, which you are making, you're adding plaster, you're adding skirting. You put in all of these items here. Similarly, you take the quantity from the AutoCAD file by measuring it exactly which wall where the plaster is coming in, what the you just do DLI in your AutoCAD file. You measure each wall. So let's say if you're doing the wall for all of them, you're going to do 3 feet 10 plus 1 feet 10. And remember when I told you the round off, just to give you another example, if it was between 1 to 3, it rounds off to 3. Between 3 to 6, it rounds off to 6. So just to give you an overview on how to calculate this, you basically do it like, for example, you will do 3 plus 1 feet 10 plus 1 feet 4. You round it off to the digits that I explained to you, and then you multiply it by the height so that it becomes your length into the height, and then you add it into your description quantity in your BOQs here. Once you add all of this, you do this for every room for your civil. You do it for utility. Similarly, you do fixing of the wall, breaking of the wall, making it, adding PCC. PCC is basically waterproofing, adding your skirtings, all of these items you do it. Similarly, you do it for your master bedroom. Now, for the master bedroom, usually again you have breaking of the walls, you have your floor plaster, wall plaster. Maybe if you need to remove existing door frames, window frames, you can include all of that. You calculate all of these items. So, for example, now how did I get this door frame? Now, usually the door size or any standard door size is a 7 feet height by a 3 feet width. So I did 7 into 3 and got 21. And then I wrote in this case, this is wrong, this will be square feet. So you will do 21 square feet and then the rate which you got for your contractor list. So 21 into 30 and the amount. So now again, this already has the calculation formula. So it will do the calculation for you. Now, once you have all of these items put in over here, again you will do the total, which is equals to sum the first item of the master bedroom, which is your F60, here, then colon, and then the next last section of the master bedroom here. So if you see, if I show you the formula, it is F60 and F71. Close the bracket and enter, and you will get all the total of this entire master bedroom from here to here. Similarly, you do this for the master bathroom. For the master bathroom, again, you have your floor, your wall plaster, your door frames, your basin counters, fixing of the mortar, fixing of the countertops. Now, when you're doing the countertops, usually there is a length and a width to it, but when you have a standard width of, let's say, around 2 feet, it's most likely the contractor will give it to you in the rate list with the unit of RFT. So, let's say if your counter size is a 3 feet, you will write 3 RFT, the rate in which the contractor has given it to you from his list, and then multiply it to get the total amount. And once you get all of this, again, you get the total of your bathroom costing. So let's say again I do equal to, and the total of all of this comes into your total here. Similarly, and last for the civil is your last room is your living dining room. For your living dining room, you basically do the same thing. You add all of the quantities here. You put the rates from the contractor rate list. You multiply the quantity into the rate to get the final amount. And the total, you do it by doing the total of the first amount to the last amount in this section. So now you have all the individual rooms. So if I look back into this, for the kitchen, I have the total, which is here 131250. For the utility, I have 63, 365. For the master bedroom, I have 108280. For the master bathroom, I have 117055. And last but not the least, for the living dining, I have 158310. So did you see I have all the individual items for the civil from the kitchen to the living room to the dining, etc. Now you want a total civil cost. The total civil cost is basically what I try to do is I try to highlight these totals of individual rooms so that it's just easier to find because it's quite a long list, right? So what I do is for the total civil list over here, I use another formula. So basically what I now, the sum formula will not work because then you cannot have gaps between each of the rows. So in this case, what I do is, let me delete this and show it to you. I will do equal to, I will select the first yellow highlighted, which is basically the total of the kitchen over here. Then I will do a plus. You can see it over here, what's happening. Then I will click on the second one here. You can see it automatically comes as F58 because F58 from here. Then again, I will do a plus. Then I will select the third master bedroom civil cost, which is this. Again, it will detect 72 and F from here. Then again, I will do a plus, add the bathroom cost, which is again a 98F. And then the last one, which is your dining area. So if you see, I've got four totals, F38, F58, F72, and F111. The total of all of these, I just click and I hit enter. And it gives me the total. And just for you to know, you can always double check this. You can click on it, double click on it, and you can see the details. So did you see how simple this was? This is what we did for the contractor labor rate. The first section, civil. Then we broke it down room wise for kitchen, utility, bedroom, bathroom, living, dining. Then we individually put in all the names from the contractor rate list over here into the description. We put all the rate lists matching to that. We calculated the quantity from your AutoCAD drawing file. We used the formula of equals to quantity into rate to get all the amounts. Then we did a total of room wise to get the total of, let's say, the entire kitchen civil cost here. Similarly, for the utility, we did the cost here. And so on, adding all of these into one total civil cost here by adding all the totals of the civil in room wise. So similarly, how we did the civil cost, let's understand how we're going to do the plumbing, the carpenter, electrician, and so on. Now for the plumbing, it's really simple. Usually you just have your kitchen and you have your bathroom. So you normally when the contractor gives you the rate list, right? Similarly, you do it from the same thing. You go into the contractor rate list, which is your plumber. You copy all the items which he's going to do, like bathroom plumbing, kitchen plumbing. You copy all of this and you put it in over here. Now, for this example, I have put in the ones which I needed for this contract. So let's say I have put in outlet, inlet, sink, hot, cold, everything that you need for the kitchen, the nanny trap, the pressure pump. I have put all of these items over here. In this case, my contractor gave me a lump sum amount, not a square feet. If he gives you a square feet, you can write again the unit, the rate, and it will multiply here. But in this case, my contractor has given me a lump sum amount that for the entire kitchen it will cost, let's say, 15,000 to do all of this work, 7,000 to do all of these, and 5,000 to do all of these. So I basically just write here all the amounts, and equal to will be the same amount as this. So in this case, you don't need to do equal to unit into rate into this. You simply just do equal to and the total amount, which was this. So you get the total of these. Similarly, you do it for your bathroom. And then the total of this, you again do the same formula. I'm going to show it to you again. Equal to sum, open bracket, select the first of the total, colon, last of the total, close bracket, enter. Same you do it for this. And then your total plumbing cost, again, if you see, you do equal to the first yellow one, which is your kitchen plumbing, plus the second, enter. So now you have the total plumbing cost as well as your total civil cost. For this per se example, let's say the total civil cost was 461205. The total plumbing cost is 83,000. Now let's move on to the third contractor, which is your carpenter. For your carpenter, you basically have, again, you're going to do it room wise. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back to the rate list over here. You're going to go into the carpenter section. You're going to copy all of these items. Copy, go to the carpenter section, put it all over here. Then whatever you don't need, for example, in a kitchen, you're not going to need a wardrobe. So you can delete that item. You're not going to need a headboard. You can delete that item. You may need a sliding door. You keep that. Whatever you don't need, you delete. Whatever you need, you keep. Then, of course, you match it also to your rate list. So let's say I take the rates from here, copy it. Whatever you deleted from here, you can remove from here as well. Just remember that whatever rates you're putting in this column is matching to the actual description over here. Don't mess that up when you're copy pasting. Now, for the example that I have already made this BOQ, I have already put in the items that I needed. I have already put in the rates from the contractor rate list, and I have calculated the quantity. Now for the quantity, how I have done this is, let's say the first section is removing of doors. Now sometimes some items are given by the contractor on a lump sum basis, as I mentioned. So you just write lump sum and you write the amount. In this case, let's say it's 6,500 to remove the doors and shutters. You write that, you do equal to, and you get this. Now let's say for making and fixing, he gave me a square feet rate. So the square feet, how I got 21. Remember I explained to you, the length of the door is 7 feet, the width of the door is 3 feet. So 7 into 3 gives you 21. So I write 21 here. The unit is square feet and the rate from the carpenter rate list was 400. So the amount is basically 21 into 400, which gave me 8,400. Taking off your tall unit, there was one tall unit which was for 1,500 square feet, so I got the 1,500. Then for your wicker baskets, all these, like for two baskets, it cost me 625. So again, I will do 2 into 625, which gave me 1,250. Then again, I do the formula where I multiply all of these units into the rates and get all of these individual totals. After this, I have to get the total of the kitchen total. So I will do equal to sum, open bracket, the first item, colon, the last item, close, enter. So I get a total of this. Similarly, I do it for my utility, get the individual units, the rates, multiplied with the amount. Again, do a sum total of these two. Same do it for the master bedroom. For the master bedroom, now you have a lot more furniture. So you're going to have all the removal. So always try to put all the things you have to remove first. So let's say removing of a door frame. Then you can write the fixing of the door frame. Anything that you need to remove or break, try to put that in the first section of all of your items. And in the next section, try to put everything that you need to add or make fresh new. So let's say for the removal of the door, again, my contractor gave me a lump sum amount, so I mentioned that here. For the fixing, he gave me a square feet, so I wrote 21. His rate was 750. Multiplied the unit into the rate, got my total amount. Similarly, I do this for all the items, whether it's my headboard, wall paneling of the AC, making a hydraulic bed, um, fixing glass shells, anything. For all of these items, I calculate my units. I put in my rate list from my contractor and I get the total amount. Now, once I get the total amount, I basically multiply the unit into the rate to get individual totals. Once I get all of these, again I do the formula equals to sum the first amount to the last amount, close the bracket. So now I have got the total of the carpentry from the master bedroom. I do the same for the living room. For the living room also, I basically add for the doors, for the paneling, for making dining table, console, all of these items are right in the description. I take the quantity from the project. So, like, let's say if I'm doing a dining table, what I will do is I will measure it. Like, if you see the dimensions are already mentioned here, 6 foot by 3 foot 8. So, I will do 6 into 3.9, whatever I get, that will become my square feet. Let's for a round off figure for this sort of calculation, let's do 6 and let's round it off. You see in this dining table here, I've written 20. So let's say if I had got my 6 into 3, I would have written 18 square feet. If I had done 6 into 4, I would have got 24 square feet. In this particular calculation, it was 20. So let's stick to the 20. So you put this quantity into the square feet, into the rate given by the contractor, and the total amount of the rate into the quantity. In this case, let's say it's 17,000. So basically, he's charging me 17,000 only labor to make the dining table. The material cost, remember, is not included in this. We'll come to that in the second half. So similarly, you do this for the crockery unit, center table. This is, of course, if you're not buying a ready-made and you're not getting into modular. If you're buying a ready-made or a modular, then it comes down in your miscellaneous section where I mentioned about the loose furniture. In our case, we were actually making all of these items on site. That is why it comes in the carpentry labor cost. Now, once you've added all of these items, again, you do a total of 19,193,700, which is the total of the entire living room. And similarly, you do a total of all the highlighted items of the carpentry. So remember for the living room, the kitchen cost was 72, then 13 was for the utility, 1.7 was for the bedroom, 36 was for the bathroom, and living dining was 193. So adding all of these, the total which I got for my carpentry cost for the full 1 BHK was 4 lakh 87. So just as a recap, we did the civil contractor first, we got the room wise. Then the next one which we did was the plumbing, which we did. In this case, we didn't have to do the bedrooms, we only had to do the kitchen and the master bathroom. We got the totals. Post that, we did the carpentry. In the carpentry, again, we got it room wise. And then we got a total of the carpentry cost. So just remember to highlight these in a different color so that it's just easier to find when you're doing the calculations. Then the next is your electrician. For the electrician, you basically again do it room wise. You put your kitchen, you write all the items again from the rate list over here. You go to your electrician, you copy all of the items he's given you here. You copy it, go to your section, you paste it, let's say in this for your kitchen. Then you take the contractor rate list, copy it from here, and you match it to your, put it in the rates column. My first one, I'll copy it here. So all of these come in. Then, for example, let's say in the kitchen you don't want a bell point, you will delete it. Supposing you don't want a TV in the kitchen, you'll remove it. Whatever you want, you keep. Whatever you don't want, you remove. Now, as an example, I have already done this for you. So let's say in the kitchen, I had all of these items. I put in these items. I put in the quantities of each. For example, let's say if I want to put a bell point, I wanted to put one bell point. The rate was 900. So the total I got was 1 into 900. Similarly, I wanted for the exhaust fan. So I did two fans into the rate of 800 and I got 1600 over here. So, for example, switchboard to switchboard, it depends. Sometimes they give you the cost in RFT for the wiring. Sometimes they give it to you in a lump sum, or sometimes they give it to you in number of points. So, depending on how your contractor gives you the rate list, is how you can put the units over here. You put the quantity, for example. Let's see if I have a AutoCAD file and I put on my light layer. So in this, I can actually see where my lights are, where my switchboards are. If you zoom in, let's say in the kitchen, you can see how many switchboards I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, going all the way to 10, 11, right? So then what I will do is in the BOQ, sorry, I will put it in here. Like for example, if 13 amperes, I have 7 points. 15 amperes, I have 8 points. Cameras, let's say I have cameras, you don't put by number, you put it by the wiring. So for example, if let's say you're putting a wiring of 80 running feet that is going from one wall to the other, that will be your 80 RFT. For the actual cameras, we do not include the white goods into this costing. This is basically to do with the electrician labor as well as the base material. The base material is basically all your internal wiring. Usually, we recommend to use the polycab wires, but use whichever wires or whichever brands you're comfortable. So, this electrician and this costing for the electrical BOQ part for the labor, we include the labor plus the base material. Just so that there is no confusion about where you're using the labor, where you're using the material, it's just better to indicate that in the title here that what costs are included over here. So let's say for the telephone, this is only including the cable for the telephone, not the actual telephone. The actual telephone that comes into the white goods. It is 36, but so you'll do 80 into 36, which will give you 2880. Similarly, you do this for all your fan points, your plug points, your switchboards, your hooks, everything, and you multiply the unit rate into the quantity. Once you get all of these, you multiply and you get individual total amounts. Once you get these total amounts, you do a total final sum of this entire total amount, which gives you the total kitchen electrical work cost. For the utility section, you basically do the same thing. You take in one point over here, you get the quantities based on your drawings, you add the rate list from the contractor rate list, and you get the total amounts. Once you get these total amounts, you do equals to sum and get the total. Now, for example, if let's say you have one fan point, you will write 1 point, the rate is 800, you get 800. Now, for the light point, usually there's a thickness in the different wires. You have 1.5 square mm, or you have 2.5 square mm, or you have 4 square mm. This is all given in the contractor rate list. If you look into detail, if you go in the electrician contractor rate list, he will mention all of this for you. So you can get it from there and then add it into your BOQ. So then you get it for the utility, you do the total, you do the same for your master bedroom. For the master bedroom, you can add for the speaker, the fixing of the lights. So let's say in the master bedroom, let's say I had to fix 7 boards. So if I go to my AutoCAD file in the master bedroom, I have literally, you can see I've numbered the switchboards over here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These switchboards will be put based on a number of switchboards I have. So let's say in the master bedroom, I have 6 switchboards. So in this section, what I will do is, let's say I go in the master bedroom. You would have written 7, right? So let's say if I had 6, I will write 6. I know that the rate for fixing one switchboard is 100. So 6 into 100 will give me 600. If I had 7 boards, let's say in the example I've given here, it'll be 7 into 100, which gives me 700. Similarly, I do this for all, and then the total which I get is for the total master bedroom here. Highlighted in another color so that I have no confusion. Do the same for the living room, dining room, and then get the total of the living room. Then again, do a total of all the rooms, that is your kitchen, your bathroom, bedroom, living, dining, get all the total cost of your electrical here as well. Include all small things from your cameras, lights, fans, Wi-Fi, distribution board, telephone, AC, everything as much as possible. Get it from your rate list and add it over here. The next contractor we do this for is your POP. POP is basically the plaster of Paris which you put onto the walls and the ceiling. Again, similarly, you divide it room wise: kitchen, utility, master bedroom, bathroom. You put in all the items from the contractor rate list. So let's say if you have the POP contractor rate list, you go to all of these items one by one, copy them from here into your BOQ, copy the rates from here. As an example, I have already done this for you. So let's say in the master bedroom for the POP, let's say if you had to break the old existing false ceiling, so you will write. So let's say if this room size, you multiply the length, which is let's say 11 feet 7, and the width, which is 17 feet 10. So what you can do is you can literally use your calculator. And remember, I told you for 17 feet 10, it's above 9, so you round it off to 18. So let's say if I do 18 into, and then the width, which was 11 feet 7, I round it off to 6, so 11.6 equals to. So I get 208.8. You can literally round it off to 209, exact 1 centimeter, 1 inch won't make that much of a difference. If you want to be very precise, then of course write 208.8, but I prefer not doing that. So let's say if the total was 208 for this ceiling for my bedroom, I go into my BOQ. I would do is in this, I've written 150, but let's say in my case it's 208. I will write 208, enter, and it will automatically calculate the total for me because I have already put in my formulas. In this case, the total was 150, so I'm going to stick to that for this example. So 150, and the rate was 20. 150 into 20 gave me 3000. Similarly, you do this for making of the POP ceiling and wall panning. Now, wall panning, usually how it happens is again, you have a square feet and an RFT. The square feet is basically, let's say if you have a room, the length of my room is 17 feet 10, right? And the height is, let's say, 10. So what I will do is I will round it off to 18. So it will become 18 into 10, which gives me 180. So this wall is 180 square feet, which is length into the height. When I'm doing this, I get 180 square feet, which is one wall. But every room has, let's say, 4 walls, right? So quick hack to do this is to multiply all of the different walls in a room. So let's say if I have 18 on this side, I also have 18 on this side, right? So simple calculation, what I can do is 18 into 2, because that's two walls. That is, this wall is 18 and this wall is 18. So 18 plus 18 is 36. Let's say this wall is 11 feet 7. So for now, this example, I'm gonna round it off for 12. So it's gonna be 12 plus 12. That is 24. So what I'm gonna do is the 4 walls which is there. That is, so 18 plus 18 plus, in this case, which I'm rounding it off to 12, plus 12 plus 12. So 18 plus 18 was 36. 12 plus 12 is 24. 18 plus 12 plus 12 gives me 60. So I have a total of all the lengths of all my walls. Now the height, assuming is the same throughout the ceiling, let's say it was 10, right? So I can do 60 into 10, enter, 600. So now I know that the wall POP's cost quantity is 600. I write 600. And I already have my rate of 35, so we'll multiply that and give it to me here. Now in this example, it was 300, so I'm going to leave it at that. But you understand the point of, you calculate the square feet of each item from your drawings, add the rate list from your contractor rates and multiply it. Now for your edge of the POP wall, again, you have a different which is an RFT. So you calculate that and put it in. Now, light cutouts, usually you have different kinds of light cutouts. For example, you have your panel lights, COBs. So usually the POP contractor will give you a certain rate for cutting these lights. So let's say if in my drawing I had a total of one light, two light, three, four, five, whatever the total quantity, I total all of those lights up. So let's say in this example, I have got 10 lights in this master bedroom. So it will be 10 lights cutouts into 80. Galas is basically in simple words, just cutouts. So 10 into the number of cutouts into the rate 80, which gives me 800. Similarly, I do this for all the totals and I get the total of the master bedroom POP work as 40,625. I do the same for the master bathroom, where I include the rates for the breaking of the ceiling, making light cutouts, packing of the. Now you must be wondering what this 2 packing of the floor and wall POP is. So sometimes to protect our floor tiles which are laid, you want to put a POP sheet on it. So usually the POP guy has a rate for that. You can add that. Once you get the total, you get the total POP for the master bedroom, master bathroom, the living dining, basically all the rooms, and then you add it up. So your total of all the rooms of the POP will give you 1,20,000. And last is you have your painter contractor list. Your painter contractor list is again you divide it room wise. You take the rate list from the rate list that he has given you. The painter usually has different types from your royal paint to your enamel to your watercut, etc. So depending on which selections you do for your space, you will literally add that into the Excel sheet. So in this case, let's say I have done the ceiling, I have put a plastic paint. So I have taken 80 from my rate list. I have calculated the area. Similarly to the POP, you calculate the area where you multiply the length of the room into the width of the room to get the ceiling, to get the walls. A simple hack I told you is calculate the length. If the room size is the same on both sides, then you can basically do the length 1 plus length 2 plus length 3 plus length 4, whatever total you get, multiply that into the height, which in, let's say in this case, I had told you 10. So let's say if it was 10 feet plus 10 feet plus 10 feet plus 10 feet, that's 40. 40 into the height, which we've considered as 10 feet. So 40 into 10 is 400. So you will simply write that here. So let's say for the walls, I'll write 400. But in this case, I'm going to stick to 40. But if you're doing, let's say, the walls, let's say in this one, right? Providing the bond. So I will do 400 square feet. The rate is already given. I'll calculate from. In this example, I'm going to stick to 300 because I've done this with another drawing in mind. But it's as simple as that. In this, again, you have a square feet and a running feet. The square feet, like I said, is length into width. When it comes to the edge of the ceiling, like the fall ceiling always has a bit of an edge. So then you're going to write in running feet because it's less than 12 inches. So let's say whatever your rate quantity is from the drawings, you take that, add your rate, and get the totals. For your polishing of your doors, also the doors usually have a thickness or an edge. So usually it's like 25 or 30 or 50 depending on what type of doors you're using and shutters you're using. So again, that comes into the RFT. You already have the rate, you calculate the quantity, and you get the total. Again, you do a lump sum of the kitchen, of the utility, room wise, of the master bedroom. In the master bedroom, you normally have your ceiling paint, then you have the edge of the thickness of the ceiling paint, then you have your wall paint, edge of the wall paint, any polishing that needs to be done on the doors, any PU texture paints. Something that we do is we actually do a PU coating on the AC so that it looks nice and fresh. So we add that. That is usually a lump sum cost. If you have this, you can add it. And then you get the total of all of these items and a grand total of all the rooms, which gives you a total final painting cost. Now what you do is, if you remember, we had got a couple of contractor rate lists, right? We do a total of all the contractor rate lists. So let's say in this, you're going to be having civil total, the plumber total, the electrician total, the carpentry total, the POP total, and the painting total. And remember, these are already highlighted. So how I do this is I basically just do, if you see what I've done, you're equal to F734, sorry, 374. So in that case, basically how I'll do is I'll do equal to, and then I'll go to the total of my civil cost, which is this, plus my total plumber cost, which is here, plus you can see what's happening here just in case. Plus I do the total of my carpentry total contractor list. So I do a plus. Then I further do a total of my electrical labor rate. So I do this plus, add my POP total, and the last one is my painter total. And I do an enter. So now what happens if you see in this, I get a total of 15 lakh of the total of all my contractor payments. So this is of course only the first part of it, which is the contractors. The next step is materials, but I hope you've understood a basic of how to do this. So now that you've got the total contractor payments over here, the next step is to understand how to calculate the material cost. So similarly for the materials, we also divided into the similar columns like how we did it for the contractor rates. So for example, the first column is your quantity, then you have the unit, then the rate, and then the total amount. So for example, even in the material quantity list, in terms of how we're going to be dividing it, we divided in similar sections. For example, the first section is your civil material. Next is your plumbing material. After that, you have is your carpentry material. And then you have is electrical material. You can also add paint material, but in our case, we've not added it. Let me explain to you why. So basically for the materials, there are two types of materials which we are including into this costing. The first one is your base material. The base material is anything that is being used under the final finished surface. So for example, if let's say you're making a furniture or a door, the plywood or the wood which you're using under the finished material is known as your base material. Whereas the finished material is anything like, let's say, if it could be a laminate, veneer, anything that you're putting on the base material. So now how we do that is in the civil material, we usually inculcate all of these items. So for example, let's say in a bathroom or a kitchen, you're using a marble, you're using quartz, you're using tiles, granites. Now you could have varieties of these, right? So there are two ways that you could do this. Either you could do a total marble and you could write the square feet of it and then the final rate and amount, or you could divide it into different marble slabs. So let's say in one bathroom, if you have one type of marble, let's say marble one, which is, let's give an example, Armani brown. And let's say if you had another type of marble being used in, let's say, bathroom two. So you can write marble two, and then you can write Satwario. Or you can name whatever marble that you're using. Let's say even in one single bathroom you have two types of marble. So it's completely your choice if you want to give individual quantities for each marble or you want to give a total. So let's say if you want to give this, and assuming in your drawing, let's say bathroom 1, when we're calculating the quantity, now remember that you're using, let's say, one marble on the bathroom counter, that is this section. So if you take the dimensions of this section, let's say this is 5 feet 7, the length of the counter, and the width is, let's say, 1 feet 9. So for example, if you multiply the two of 5 feet 7 into 1.1 feet 9, so you will round it off to 5.6 into 1.9, which will give you a total of around 10.64. Now always remember that when you're calculating the marble or any material as per se, it is never the exact material that you're using. There is usually amount of at least, I would say, 10% wastage that you should consider. So let's say in this case it was 10.64. Now if you were using this marble in, let's say, other places as well, like let's say if you were using it in the flooring or you were using it in the shower panel, then you basically add all the places that you're using this particular marble and you total it up to get the total quantity. But for this example, let's assume that you're using this particular marble only for this section. So the total which we got is, let's say, 10.6, right? So now 10.6. Now also remember, when you're calculating something like a marble, you usually get them in slabs. So even if you're using, let's say, only 10 square feet of the marble, a slab size usually comes in the range of 8 feet by 4 feet. Sometimes it's 6 feet, sometimes it ranges. Usually as a standard, we consider 8 feet by 4 feet. Right, so let's in this example assume that the marble is 8 feet by 4 feet, which is 8 into 4, which is 32. So even though you need only 10.6 square feet as per your design in this bathroom, you will still need to write the total in the materials quantity section as 32, considering you're taking one full marble slab. Now let's assume that the marble slab was even 6 feet by 4 feet. Then it will be 6 into 4, which will give you 24. So basically, this quantity is the total quantity which you are purchasing, including the wastage. So you will write 24 square feet or whatever square feet that you are using into the rate. So let's say the cost of buying an Armani Brown one slab is 500 square feet. So you will write 24 into 500, and the total will get calculated with the same formula which we use for the labor quantities as well. Similarly, now let's say for the Satuario marble. Now let's assume we're using it on the entire flooring of this bathroom, which inculcates this entire space here. So the length of the flooring over here is 9 feet 6, and the width of this bathroom flooring is 5 feet 7. So now again you round this off. So you're going to get a 9.5 into a 5.5, which is going to give you a total of around 53. So what you're going to do is now 53, again you need to remember the wastage when it comes to marble. So if you're considering 10% of 53, that's going to be around 58, because 53 plus 5 is around 58. But also to keep in mind the slabs. So let's say that you needed 24 square feet in this case, but in this case you needed 58 square feet, right? But unfortunately, you need to consider the wastage and the slab size as well. So if you do 24 into 2, which is 48, so obviously it will not fit into two slabs. So you need to consider that three slabs will be used. So let's say if you do 24 into 3, you're going to get a total of 72. So here you are going to write 72, even though you actually need 58 square feet, because you cannot take half a slab. When the vendor is selling you the material, they are going to sell the entire slab. Yes, that's right, 72 square feet. And let's say the rate for this one is around 600. These rates are usually provided by your vendor. When you are buying it from any marble store or anything, he will give you the cost for it. So in this case, let's say the formula is the quantity multiplied by the rate, which in this case give me 43,200. Similarly, you do this for all your materials. So let's say if you're taking the quartz, you're going to be using it on your window frame, door frame. Accordingly, you calculate all the quantities for it. So let's say in this case, if I'm using it for this window frame, my window size is 2 feet 9. Now the width of this window frame is usually going to be around 6 inches if it's an internal wall, or 9 to 12 inches if it is an external wall. So what you're going to do is you're going to multiply and see how much you're going to need in a frame. Usually your elevations help you for this. So considering you already have your elevations ready, so for the window you have four sides. So how I would recommend to do that is, for example, the base and the top is pretty much the same size, as you can see, 2 feet 9. So what you can do is you can do 2 feet 9, which you can round it off to 2.9 into 2, which gives you 5.8. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to consider the height. So in this case, the height is 3 feet 8, right? Now again, the left and the right is the same size. So what I would recommend you do is 3.6, because you're rounding it off, into 2, which gives you 7.2. So now that you have both these amounts, what you're going to do is you're going to add it up. So 7.2 plus 5.8 gives you 13. Okay, so when you're doing the calculation for this, you're going to write 13. Now again, if you have multiple bathrooms, multiple windows, and you're using the quartz in multiple areas, like let's say maybe you're matching it to the door frame, then you're going to add the door frame as well. So now the door size, let's assume, is 7 feet by the height and 3 feet by the width. So let's assume that on the top of the door, you're never going to have anything on the bottom of the door, right? So in this case, your top is only 3 feet. So you do 3 for the top. And for the two sides, which is going to be 7 plus 7, you do 14. So 14 plus 3 gives you 17. So 17 is the RFT. So what you're going to do is you're going to do 17 plus this 13, which you already had for the window, which is 30 RFT because it's less than 12 inches. So 30 RFT, and let's say the cost for the quartz is, let's assume, around 450. So you're going to do 30 into 450, which gives you 13,500. Similarly, you do this for all the items. So let's say if you're putting tiles, vitrified tiles for the floor and the walls and the skirting, then you can put tiles. If you're not putting the marble, if you're only putting the marble, then you only put the marble and then you delete the tiles. Completely depends on what material you are using for your space. Instead of quartz, if you're using granite, then again you can calculate how much counter space you're using for the granite. Calculate that, put it in the square feet area, add the rate, and get the total over here. So you do this for all your materials in the civil. You get all the individual costs of all the civil items. Again, you do the equal to sum, bracket open, select the first item which is coming in your civil material, colon, select the last material coming into your thing and close the bracket. So you are going to get a total of how much each item is going to be used in this. So you are going to get the total item of how much money you're going to spend on the total civil material. So you're also going to have the breakup of each item and you're also going to get the total. This might also become a lot easier because a lot of the times when you buy the material from the vendors, they actually give you a bill for each item. So you can totally include it over here. After you get the total civil material, the next item is your second plumbing material. The plumbing material usually includes your sanitary ware for all the bathrooms as well as for the kitchens. Now for the kitchen, it's quite standard. You're going to be having a sink and a tap. Whereas for the bathroom also it's standard where you're going to be having your shower, your WC, your basin. Sometimes some additions could be that you're adding a tub and you don't have a tub for certain. This you're going to be getting a complete bill from the vendor. So there are two ways to do this. Either you can just write a lump sum amount and match it to the bill amount which is given by the vendor. Let's say if the vendor is giving you a bill where the sink cost is 12,000 and the tap faucet cost is 3,000. So 12,000 plus 3,000 is 15,000. So you can either write the total of 15,000 in a lump sum here, or if needed you can even give a breakup of this further, wherein here you can write as kitchen sink and you can write 12,000. And next time you can add a separate point as kitchen tap and you can write 3,000 and you can copy the lump sum. If you have two sinks, you can write two of each. If you have one, you can write one. And then again, you use the formula where you do the quantity into the rate, which gives you the amount. So if you see now we have the breakup of the sink, which is 12,000 and 3,000. Or like the original way I showed you, I had done a combination of 15,000 where you can write the total here and in your individual bills, you can keep a copy to show to the client that 12,000 was the sink and 3,000 was the tap. That completely depends on how detailed you want to show the BOQ. The next step for this is similarly for the kitchen, you want to show how the bathroom is going to be. So for the bathroom, let's say if you have the shower, you have the basin, you have the faucets, you have the nani trap. So again, there are two ways to do this. Either in bracket, you can mention all the items that are coming in this and give a lump sum amount. Like let's say totally this is going to charge you 50,000 and then keep the original bills, copies of all of this, which you can show the client side by side when you're giving them this document. Or another way is again to give a breakup of all of these items. So let's say if the shower costs you 15,000, you can write shower 15,000 and then you can write the tap 5,000. Similarly, you write each item breakup. But for me personally, I prefer writing the totals over here and keeping the bills separately because it's just easier to understand and explain to the client. Plus, the material list becomes really, really long if you add one small item over here. So this kind of becomes like your summary. And for like showing proof, you can have the individual bills which you support along with this. So now that you've got the individual plumbing materials for like the kitchen, the bathroom, etc., you get the total of it by again doing the sum total. So let's say if I'm going to do equal to sum, open bracket, select the first item, colon, select the last item, enter. So now that you know in this example, your total plumbing material cost is 75,000 and your total civil material cost is 2,68,000. Again, these are just examples, so don't look at it into as a actual amount. It could be different based on your bathroom size and your kitchen size. The next type of material we have to consider is the carpentry material. Now, in the carpentry material, remember I told you there were multiple types of materials that you're including. For this is basically your base material, which usually includes your plywood, your BTC wood, and then you have the finished materials, like let's say your laminate, veneer, mirror, glass, any finish that you're going to be showing externally finished onto that base material. So again, for this, usually when you're buying a plywood or a wood, something from one vendor, they give you an entire bill of the total amount. So again, what you can do is, let's say if the plywood is going to cost you 1 lakh, you can write the total of 1 lakh here. I'm going to do 1 lakh and the total will be 1 lakh. There's nothing to multiply it to. But let's say if there's certain item, like let's say a veneer, if you are not going to be buying it by sheet and you're going to buy it by square feet, a veneer on the door size is 8 feet by 4 feet, right? So 8 into 4 gives you 32 square feet. So here you can write 32 square feet. And let's say the cost per veneer is, let's say, 100. So you're going to write 100. And then here in the formula, you're going to equal to 32 into 100, which gives you 3200. So again, there are two ways to do the material costing. You can either write it in the square feet way or you can do it in the lump sum way, depending on how the vendor has given you the bill and how you would like to show it to the client. Ideally, I would like to say whatever is written in the billing system, try to match that into your BOQ so that it's easier as supporting documents when you're trying to explain to the client the breakup of each item. So similarly, you do this for your wood, you do this for your laminate, veneer, glass, mirror, in terms of your handles. Now, again, if you have multiple types of handles, you can write handle 1, handle 2, handle 3, or like I told you, you can write a lump sum of the total handles and then show the breakup in the bills attached for the supporting documents of this POQ. The handles, it costed you 50,000. For the locks, let's say it costed you 30,000, right? So then what you're going to do is you will keep adding all the totals over here. And right at the end, you're going to do a sum, which is going to be equal to sum, open bracket, colon, the last number, close bracket, enter. Calculate the entire material cost for the carpentry. Each vendor could be different, or you could have one vendor for all the items. For example, the locks and the hardware for the handles and channels could be the same vendor. So if you need, you can club the two as well. If you have individual vendors, you can write them as individual amounts. Now the next one is your electrical material. Now electrical material, again, you have your lights. Now, in the lights, you can have various types. For example, you can have your panels, spots, wall washers, you can have accent lights, LED strips, linear profiles, individual drivers or chokes, as we say. For each of these lights, you have your switchboards, fans, etc. Now, again, if you have one vendor for all of these, either you can just start a point saying lights and then give a total of what the amount is going to be. Or let's say if you have 45 panel lights, you can even write 45 and write which specific light is coming over here. The number of lights that you're going to need is 45, but the rate per light is 1000. So 45 into 1000 gives you 45,000. Now let's say for the linear profile lights, you had two linear profile lights. So you do 2 into 3500 into 7000. And how you can get the quantity, so in your electrical layout that you have shown over here, you will be writing the number of lights that you have, right? So for example, P1, P2, P3, P4, P5, P6. So let's say in the kitchen you have 6 panel lights. Then if you go to the another bedroom, let's say you have P1, P2, P3, P4, that's 4. So 4 plus 6. So like this, you can keep adding the total number and then you can add it into your BOQ. So now you can either do this room wise or you can do it total. I prefer doing it totally because it's just easier, because when you have the billing, it's usually for the entire place. You're not going to buy one light per room, right? You're going to be buying all the lights from all the vendors. So I always prefer doing lump sum amounts. So let's say if I have total 45 lights, I will write 45 lights. Now coming to your switchboard, usually that's a different vendor. So normally if let's say even in your drawings over here, per room you're going to write switchboard 1, switchboard 2, switchboard 3. So per room you can calculate, like let's say this one has 4 switchboards, this one has 6 switchboards, this one has another 3 switchboards. So you're going to total all of those number of switchboards that you have, and then you're going to write the total number. So let's say in this one BHK, for example, we had totally 40 switchboards going on. You can write again lump sum, and let's say the total amount, because every switchboard could be a different module, right? You have modules ranging from 2 module, 1 module going to 8 module, etc. So every module cost could be different. So another way that I would recommend to do this is to write 40 lump sum and then just write the total amount. You don't even have to write the word 40, then you can just write lump sum, and let's say the total costing for this is 40,000, and then you can do 40,000, then you can do equal to this amount. So now you know that there are two ways to do the calculation of the materials. One option is, and you can do it the exact number into the rate giving you the total, or you can do it lump sum. Like I said, please match this to the bills that you receive from the vendors, because it's going to be so much easier. I personally feel to write the total number with the lump sum here and then show the breakup in the individual bills which you support is the best way to do the material cost. Once you get all of these individual materials, so let's say we had the total civil material cost, which was 2,68,700. Then the second one we had was your total plumbing material, which was 75,000. Then the third one, which was let's say your carpentry material, which was let's say 1,83,000 in this case. And let's say your electrical material, which was 2,62,000. So these were the individual. So now for the total material cost, again you do equal to and you add all these amounts. So for example, you will write equal to, you will add the first total of the civil material list. So you will include this plus the total plumbing material. You will write this. You can see that what I'm doing over here. So you will see it. Then I'm going to add is your carpentry total material, which is also highlighted if you see in another color. I'll include this plus, and then last I'm going to add is the electrical material, and I'm going to do enter. So then what happens is I get the total material cost is 7,88,000 in this specific example. So if you can see, I have the individual carpentry, electrical, civil materials as well as I have the total. Now in this case, I have not written a separate painting or a POP cost, because in my case, if you see in the contractor labors, it is already included in that cost. So if you can see over here, I have specifically mentioned in the POP labor rate, labor plus material. If you want to show it separately, feel free to, but I personally feel a POP usually comes with the material. There's nothing you have to specifically check, so I don't include it. Similarly for the painting also, if you see in the contractor labor first part, I have written labor plus material. That is the reason I have not included the materials in the material section for the painting and the POP. However, if you are buying a specific paint or a specific POP that's different from the regular cost, feel free to add a section 5 and 6 and adding those material costs and then doing the total of the entire thing. After you have this, the next section comes in the miscellaneous items. Now, the miscellaneous items are things which you're buying ready made, which you don't need to actually make. You're just buying as ready made items. So, for example, I divide this into three parts. One is your loose furniture. For loose furniture, all the loose items that you're buying, like let's say for the living room, you have a sofa, you have a sofa bed, you have an armchair, you have a study chair, dining chair. So usually these items are pretty much fixed lump sum amounts, right? Like let's say if you have one sofa and it is for 1 lakh rupees, it's going to be 1 into this. Now let's say if you have two sofas of the same size, it will be 2 into 1 lakh, which gives you 2 lakh. Now let's say for the sofa bed you have one, so it is going to be 1 into 40,000, which gives you the total. So similarly, you can write the number of items that you require. Again, you can do this room wise. So let's say for the living room, you have this. For the bedroom, you can include a bed, side table. But usually from what I realize that the bed, side table, wardrobes are made either by the carpenter, and in this specific example, it was made by the carpenter. Hence, we put that into the carpentry labor and material. However, these items we did not make it at site. We got it ready made. So anything that you are buying ready made which does not require a separate breakup of a labor and material are usually included in this list. So in the loose furniture, I write all the items that you're buying. If let's say if you were buying the bed ready made and you were not getting it made, you can feel free to add it over here. So you write all the items over here. You write the quantity of number of items you need here. Write the rate of each and then write the total of each of the items. Once you get the total of each of these items, you give a grand total of the entire loose furniture. So again, you will do a sum. So you're going to do equal to sum, open bracket, open the first one, colon, and then put the last one here. Enter. So now you know that the total loose furniture cost is 3,57,000 in this case. The next part in the miscellaneous amount is your home decor. So usually after you design the space, there is a lot of styling that comes into account. A lot of people don't include this in the BOQ in the beginning, and then by the end of the project, the client doesn't have enough budget for this, and your site looks incomplete. So what I recommend is include this right from the beginning. Even if there are minor changes at the end, that's not a problem. But at least having a basic understanding of how much you're going to be spending on each of these styling items, it's important. So let's say if you're putting a wallpaper in the living room or in the bedroom, you can understand the square feet of this. So let's say one wall is 5 feet by 10 feet, 5 feet by width and 10 feet by height. So 5 into 10 gives you 50 square feet. 50 square feet, and let's say the rate of the wallpaper is let's say 700. So 50 into 700 gives you 35,000. Again using the same formula. Now let's say for the mattress, let's say you bought one mattress and the cost of one mattress is let's say 30,000. So you're going to do equal to 1 into 30,000, which gives you 30,000. Now, similarly, for each item, you can do this, whether it's your bedding, your curtains, your headboard, your rugs, mats, paintings. You can just write the number of items, write what unit you're going to be doing it, whether it's lump sum, whether it's a square feet, whether it's a running feet. Write the rate of each of these items and then get the totals of each thing. Again, try to keep this as matching as possible to your vendor bills because having the same format, having the same things makes it much easier when you're going to be explaining to the client when you're showing them the supporting documents alongside with the BOQ. Again, once you get the individual items, you do a sum. So equal to sum, open bracket, take the first item in the miscellaneous, last item in the miscellaneous, close bracket and enter. So let's say your total home decor was 4,33,000. The last section is your miscellaneous. These are all the services which are extra besides for the services which is assumed including the drawing docket, etc. So usually if you want to outsource your work, like let's say if you are making 3D visuals and you don't want to do it in-house, you want to actually outsource it by someone, you can definitely include them. So let's say for a 1 BHK, I made 4 3D views and the cost which the vendor charged me was 3,000. So I'm going to write 4 views of 3,000 rupees each, which gave me 12,000. Similarly, for the site supervisor, let's say that he did it for 2 months. He supervised the project for 2 months and he charged me 15,000 for 1 month. So 2 into 15,000, which gives me 30,000. Similarly, you do this for all the extra services. I would say to include deep cleaning, steam ironing, any small item that you feel will be needed by the client. Please add this now so that you don't have add-on costs later and then you're struggling on how to add it to your BOQ or the client is mad at you for the bill going super high. So include all the small items into this, and after you have written all the items, one very important thing that I say to add is just write a miscellaneous items thing and put a lump sum of at least 50,000 in this amount because these could be very small things which you cannot even think of at this stage but may get added on later. So that this really helps to not have the client think that the cost which you gave in the beginning and the BOQ which you gave at the end is very different from each other. So keep that as a lump sum. 50,000 is what I always recommend. If you're going for a 2 BHK, maybe increase this cost a bit more. And once you get the individual items for all of these, you do a total again with the sum. Sum open bracket, the first item here, colon, close bracket with the last item and enter. So now you know that the total miscellaneous item cost is 2,86,000. Now, the total miscellaneous, this includes your three things. One is your total loose furniture, which was 3,57,000. Second was your home, which was 4,33,000. And the third was your individual miscellaneous services, which was 2,86,000. So over here, I'm going to do a total miscellaneous items of all three. So I'm going to do equal to, I'm going to add the loose furniture total. If you can see, I've highlighted it. 3,57,000 plus total of home decor, which is 4,33,000, plus the total of the miscellaneous services, which is 2,86,000. Enter. So now your total miscellaneous cost, including your loose furniture, your home decor, and your miscellaneous services, comes up to 10,76,000. And then the last is your total of both of these, which is a simple way. Now, if you see, I usually highlight it into two colors. All the totals, which were the individual totals, like let's say a total electrical material list, or your total carpentry material list, or your total painting list, these I had marked in one color. In this example, I've marked it as yellow. Whereas the total of these totals, I had marked it in an orange color. So for example, the main two totals, if you can see in this case, I'm just going to highlight it in another color for you to understand now. So let's say the two totals which I need are your total contractor payments, which is your labor, total material list, your miscellaneous items. So these were the three items. So when I'm going to do a final total of the material and the labor, I'm going to do a total of these three. If you see, I've highlighted specifically in blue. So for the grand total of material and labor, I'm going to add all these three items. So let's say I'm going to do equal to the first blue which I highlighted for you, which is the total contractor payment list, which was around 16 lakh, plus I'm going to add your total material cost list. So I'm going to add this, which is around 7.5, plus your total miscellaneous cost, which was around 10, enter. So if you see in this total, I have the grand total, which includes the material as well as the contractor labor cost. So the total for this 1 BHK, let's say, is 35 lakh. Now on this 35 lakh, it does not include your design fees. Now your design fees, there are a couple of ways that you can do this. Some designers charge it through a lump sum amount, some do it through a percentage, and some do it through a square feet. So let's say if you are doing it through a lump sum, then you can remove this and just write, let's say you were charging 2 lakh to design this 2 BHK. So you will just write 2 lakh, enter. So it will become your total of the material and labor here plus your design fee. Let's say if you charged a consultation fee, or let's say if you had charged a 5,000 for the consultation fee, and then your grand total comes up to 37 lakh. Or let's say if you were not going to do it through a lump sum, you were going to do it through a square feet. So let's say if you were charging the client 150, let's say you were charging the client 150 square feet, and the area of your space was, let's say, around 600. So you will do equal to 150 into 600, which is 90,000. So let's say you were charging 90,000 for this project, 5,000 for the consultation. So then the grand total becomes 35 plus 90 plus 5, which gives you 36. Or if you do percentage, which is what I usually charge, let's say you're doing 10% on the total project cost. And the total project cost, remember, includes all the services that we mentioned earlier. So then what I would do is, I would not write any of this. Instead, in this section, I would do equal to 10 Then I would do slash, which basically means divide. It's an easy formula. 100, so that's 10 divided by 100, which is 10%. Asterisk. And then I put in the total amount over here. So it gave me 3,53,000. Now let's say if it was a higher percentage, let's say if you were charging 12%. So in this case, in the beginning where you wrote 10 upon 100, you will write 12 upon 100 and it will calculate it in that case. So whatever system that you are charging your design fees, make sure to add that right at the end over here. If you are charging a consultation fee, please add that also over here. And then your grand total should be a total of all of these. That is equal to your total which you got for the material and labor, your fees, your design fees, and your consultation fees if you are charging. So now you know that the grand total for your designing this 1 BHK is 39,58,000. So now remember that this is just an example. Do not stick with the numbers and the cost that I have written. So just an example for you to understand. But just remember that this is how you do the basic BOQ. Giving you a quick summary, what we did is we divided into three parts: your contractor, your material, your miscellaneous items, and then whatever total we got from this, we added it with your design fee, however you did it, percentage, lump sum, or square feet, and got a grand total. So this is how you design your BOQ. I hope this was helpful.